Hey, it's Friday. I'm Randy, host of Building Wins Live, and my buddy, compadre, pal, brother, producer, director, and just extraordinaire himself is back there, a little cloudy in the back room. I see him punching buttons. He's waving at me. He's making the good stuff happen. Also got my good friend Ken Drombosky, who's going to be on shortly, and we're going to have a great talk today. Hope you've been building some wins this week, because it's been a great week after a crazy April. A crazy April of the old school hashtag Road Warrior Randy. It's easy for me to say, right? Now back week in the office, a lot of stuff done, and now we are going to build some wins together and hear an amazing story by my friend Ken, Captain Ken Drombosky, Vietnam vet, all around great guy, and a true leader, and you're going to love him. So with no further ado, which I can't spell that word, Wes and I was talking about words that I can't spell and say off air before the show, and there's a lot of them. But anyways, we will be right back with my friend Ken. Don't go away. Ken, my friend, how are you, sir?
Hey, Randy, I'm fine. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you for being on. This is going to be fun. This is going to be a good time. I got to say something real quick. Kirsten, you're number one again. She's always number one unless Barry beats her. It's a game these two have. Kirsten, welcome. So yeah, it's great. We've known each other and run across each other for a lot of years because we've both been in the metal roofing world. You as a metal guy as far as roofing and siding, and myself in the component world. So it was really, really awesome to get to know you more at the BFBA meeting a month and a half ago, and you gave a great talk on your book, Free Fire, that we're going to talk about today, and your time as a leader, as a captain when you retired with the first Cav. And so, but before we get to that, give me the current day, if you like. Who is Ken Drombosky? Where do you live? You got family? I know all this stuff, but I'll pretend like I'm asking a question I don't know, kind of like a trial attorney does, right?
Okay, great.
Who is Ken?
I live in Boardman, Ohio. I am 75 years old. I have two boys, both very, very successful. One lives in Washington, D.C., and the other in the Pittsburgh area. Very happy with life. Life has been exceptionally good to me. And that pretty much is a nutshell. I lived here in Boardman for 25 years now and love it. Yeah. I was with the first Cav, if you don't mind me going into that, drafted into the military back when there was a draft before there were numbers. And my kids asked me to write a book because I had a very, very unusual experience with the military. I was drafted into the military right after a car accident when I was in a body cast for 3.5 months. And shortly after getting out of the body cast, I went for a physical, and they give you what's called the mirror test. And the way the mirror test runs is they put a mirror under your nose, and if it fogs up, you're good to go.
So you weren't getting out, is what you're saying?
I was what?
You were not getting out. You were going.
No, my doctor wrote a letter. I gave it to them. They kind of filed it away. They gave me an open prescription on Darvon and Robaxin, painkiller and muscle relaxant. They knew I had a problem. I was told that back then they gave digits of 5 or 6. 5 if you were physically unable, and a 6 if you were mentally unable to be in the military normally. And this was called McNamara's 100,000 program. And the McNamara 100,000 program was put in force so that they wouldn't have to draft college kids. They could go a little bit deeper into the general population. Okay. I immediately checked my number to make sure I was a 5, which I was. But they did keep me. They gave me an open prescription, no questions asked. I complained about sleeping on a mattress, and the next day a board appeared for me to sleep on. Again, no questions asked. I never thought about it, but they knew I had a problem. I went through basic training, but about the 4th week in basic training, we were all piled into a great big hall, about 1,000 of us sitting in chairs, and you never get to sit in chairs in basic training. You're either running, marching, or sitting on the ground. And up on the stage, a car pulls on, a sports car, convertible, with a brand new lieutenant driving. He's got the bar on his shoulder, and next to him, sitting smiling at us, is a beautiful girl. And the announcer says, "This can be you if you pass the officer candidate test." And so a couple of days later, they gave everybody the officer candidate test. Three of us were asked to go before a board, which consisted of a colonel, I believe, two majors, and two captains. They fired questions at us, and I was put into what's called a OCS holdover. So what that meant was I went through advanced infantry training, but in a special group of people where if someone from the college ranks was not able to fill a slot in OCS, they'd yank one of us and put us in his seat.
Okay.
And I did that for probably 3 months where I was an OCS holdover. And one day a sergeant came running up to me while I was on a detail scoring at a rifle range. And he said, "Private Drombosky." And I said, "Yes, Sergeant." He said, "Get on in that car. You're on a jet going to Fort Benning in 2 hours."
Wow.
So they didn't give much notice then. And 2 hours, I was at the airport, flew to Fort Benning, and Monday morning began my officer candidate school classes. I felt like I had a big advantage on my contemporaries in that they were all infantry. I couldn't bend to touch my knees. I
Okay.
was non-combat arms. I have 2,500 vision, and I'm getting over a fractured back, and I'm living on painkiller and muscle relaxant. So I never paid attention during any of the classes and pretty much passed anything without studying. And I had a reasonable, acceptable grade and got through. And when you turn senior candidate, they announce what branch you're going to. And I'm waiting for them to say quartermaster, which is non-combat. And they said infantry. And I said, no, 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 no. Quartermaster. They said, no, 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 infantry. They won out.
Yeah.
And knew that if I would have taken my commission, then I would have gotten people killed because I wouldn't know enough to call in artillery, rockets, air support, and so forth. So I took a drop. OCS was pretty tough. I took a drop from the end of an OCS class to the beginning of another class that was just starting out and did the whole thing all over again so that
Okay.
I really knew what I was talking about or doing when I was in a combat situation. I volunteered for the first cavalry. That's the patch right here. And the
Okay. There
first
it is.
cav, the reason I volunteered for them is because they had the helicopters. And I thought to myself, I'll fly over the jungle instead of marching through it.
Right.
I thought, hey, that's for me.
Sounds good, right?
Yeah, little did I know they saw the most combat, they had the most casualties. If there was action, that's where they were. And those flying through the jungles is when you were on your way on a combat assault to meet up with the enemy. Uh, Mostly we ambushed.
Right.
Uh, we ambushed almost every night, and we would move in the day. They would ambush us. We would move at night, or they would move at night. We would ambush them back. The whole idea was for us to find where they had groups of 750 or so in a regiment. And when we found them, the idea was for us to pull back. They would call in the B-52s to do what's called an arc light, and just 2 kilometers by 3 kilometers, everything is dead.
Hmm.
And then we'd go back in. Well, the bad guys knew this. So what they would do is they would filter their people out real quickly while they pinned us down. Of course, we're taking casualties the whole time too. And when they got their people dispersed, then they finally let us go. Excuse me, let us go. Um, so that was basically what we did for 7 months that I was there. The average lieutenant when I was there lasted about 3 weeks,
Wow.
and I was in the jungle for 7 months. And the reason that I didn't get out of the jungle like a normal lieutenant would is because we didn't have enough lieutenants to replace those that we were losing. Um, when I first joined up with the CAV, we were in what's called I Corps, which is up on the northern part of Vietnam. And I thought the war was over. I OJT'd on the job training with a lieutenant that was experienced, and it was all flat. You could see for miles and miles and miles. There was no jungle to speak of. And that's where I OJT'd. The first day I went out with this new lieutenant, he looks at me and says, "Rifle? Yep. Frags or hand grenades? Yep. Flashlight, yep. Map, yep. Okay, be real careful because as soon as we go through this tree line, there's going to be a lot of Vietnamese. And we went through the tree line, and my heart's beating, pounding, racing. And all of a sudden, GI, Coca-Cola, $1, ice cold. Little kids selling Coke all day long everywhere we went. Ice cold Coke, $1.
No
And
kidding.
I thought, this war's not going to be too bad after all. They flew in hot meals for us. At nighttime, we would set up a perimeter. The Vietnamese people knew this. They would leave because they knew we were down to business. Next morning, first thing, waking us up, GI, Coca-Cola, $1. And all day long, they'd be selling Coca-Colas to us.
Wow.
So I OJT'd for a week, or 2 weeks, excuse me. And then I took over my platoon. And 3 days after I took over my platoon, they moved the entire 1st Cavalry down to 3 Corps, which is down north of Saigon, and an area called Parrots Beak and Fishhook. And this was a super hot area, which was a major infiltration route. And they were basically going to use us as bait. They were going to put us out there, try to get us attacked, find out where the bad guys were, in force 750. We're running in a group of about maybe 100 people or less, and we're trying to chase down 750 of them to find them.
Yep.
And so we get down to 3 Corps, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do sweeps. And the company commander, my boss, said, okay, I want these 2 platoons to go up here on this ridge and down across the river, and we'll meet up on this hill. And then Smoky platoon, that was me. He said, Smoky, I want you to go the other direction on the river and then come up and we'll all meet on the hill this evening. 100 yards in the jungle is like a mile. It takes that long.
Wow.
And we started sweeping along the stream, and it's hours and hours of doing this. And we're turned to go and head up this hill to meet up with the rest of the company. We called on the radio, say, we're coming up the hill because we don't want to take friendly fire. And we get up to the top of the hill and there's no one there. And we're kind of going, something's wrong here.
Yeah.
We know that the North Vietnamese are all over the place because we could hear on the radio where other units of ours were having contact with the enemy and they were having pitched battles. And we're there by ourselves, about 30 of us out in the middle of nowhere. And we had to climb a tree with a railroad flare and put the railroad flare up on the top of the tree where they could shoot a back azimuth to us, the company, to let us know what line to take to reach them. And it was getting pitch black dark. And there's bad guys all over the place. And I know they were thinking, this has got to be a trap. They're not that stupid to go climbing up in a tree with a railroad flare at night. So God blessed us. We were able to get back to the company. We had to go through swamps that were chest deep. We didn't even know we were going to come up on swamps and crossing little streams and rivers and swamps. And we were a mess, and we didn't reach the rest of the company till about midnight. And this is my first time out with my people.
Wow.
And I'm going, boy, this is not going to be good because they're going to think, what have we got for a lieutenant? I mean, I went through Panama Jungle School and I was honor graduate and I knew land navigation. And so when we got back to the company perimeter, I took my platoon sergeant with me to meet up with the company commander so that we could hear it from his mouth that, yeah, I kind of changed the hill after you left and forgot to tell you. And so that went over okay with my men where they would trust me with the next mission because when leadership is built, it's built on trust. They have to trust you. They have to follow you. They have to believe in you. In return, what you do for them is you help them grow. And that's the biggest part of leadership is to help someone grow, find out their strengths and build on them. Leadership isn't when you have 50 guys behind you. Leadership is when you have 50 guys alongside you, all moving in the same direction with the same purpose.
Great. Great point. A quick question, Ken. You were
Yeah,
how old at this point in time?
I was 20. I was
Okay.
20. I was 20
You
when I got my commission. I was 21 when I went to Vietnam, and I
and
turned 22 in Vietnam.
so everybody under your charge were literally kids. I mean,
Yes, I
17,
had all
18,
18 and
19 years old.
year olds. My platoon sergeant was probably 26. He was the old man.
Right. Right.
He was
So,
the old man. See, the thing about young kids is they're bulletproof and invisible.
right.
And it's always the other guy that's going to take the hit. Because if you take the hit, you're never going to know it.
Right.
It's always the other guy that takes the hit. So that was my OJT and my first trip into the jungle. And we did bump into Vietnamese, North Vietnamese Army regulars, uh, typically twice a day.
Okay.
They, they said in World War II, the average combatant in 4 years faced 40 days of combat.
Okay.
In Vietnam, the average combatant in 1 year faced 240 days of combat.
Wow.
So yeah, there was just combat every
That's
day. We'd
every
typically
day.
have twice a day. We'd move in the day, they'd ambush us. They'd move at night. We'd ambush them back. Um, tell you a little bit about combat assaults if you want to hear.
Yeah. Real quick though,
Sure.
Kirsten, I just wanted to shout out. Kirsten just said, "Hey Ken, thank you for your service." So I wanted you to see
Oh,
that.
you're
And
quite welcome. You're quite
and
welcome.
her husband's she'll correct me if I'm wrong, as a retired police officer. So he's from the bend of giving service, to the
Well, he's
community as
on the
well.
line
So
too.
exactly. And
Yeah.
Barry Brock's my good buddy, pal, and friend. Said howdy. So thank you for jumping on. But yeah, go ahead and continue, Ken. The story I've heard the story. I've read your book, and it's still riveting to me. I, I promise you I won't let you go 4 hours today because I know you could, but it's
Okay.
there's the book up there right now. But yeah, please continue. Just
It's on
tell
Amazon.
us about your life there.
Well, a combat assault is in a Huey helicopter. A lot of people are familiar with a Huey. It would carry 6 heavily weighed down troops, along with 2 pilots and 2 door gunners. Excuse me. Um, the first combat assault that I went on, you see all the stories and you go, wow, this is how it's done. First combat assault, my left arm was holding on to the door frame. I slid down onto the skids, so I'm totally outside the chopper. I have a 70-pound pack on my back, and I have my M16 rifle in my right hand. And we're coming in on the landing zone where we're coming in on the combat assault. We were the lead chopper, and boom, boom, the tree line just starts blowing up. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, we're getting mortared on the landing zone. And then I looked back and I saw a Cobra gunship, and it's coming in and it's firing its rockets into the tree line to keep the bad guys' heads down while we
Ah,
came in. It was just like watching a movie. It was like
wow.
so vivid in my mind that watching those rockets come down and hit the tree line and the combat assault. There was one occasion where we had a hot landing zone and a hot pickup zone, which is really bad because the Cobras, you got to figure out where they're going to expend their rounds at to get you out and get you moved. But that was my first combat assault. Then from there, we would push to a trail that was designated. And it was usually maybe 1 or 2 kilometers away, which may be about a mile. And we would set up our night ambush. We would set up the night ambush just as it's getting dark. You'd have the last streamers of light coming through the triple canopy jungle. And the manuals in the military tell you to set up an L-shaped ambush.
Okay.
And I'm going, the bad guys read our manuals. I
Right.
never set up an L-shaped ambush. Mine would always be a blocking ambush. I would tie into something on my one side, like trees, very, very heavily forested, and something on the other side like that was impenetrable so that the bad guys couldn't come around us if there was a lot of them. And then we would set up claymore mines down the trail. For those of you that aren't familiar with a claymore mine is about 16 inches wide by about 7 inches tall, has 2 fuse wells in the top where the blasting caps go, and it runs back to a striker that is handheld that where you can strike it and it blows the claymore. The claymore has C4 plastic explosive in it, which is extremely fast plastic explosive. And then packed in front of that plastic explosive are about 500 ball bearings, just slightly smaller than marbles. And the statistics are that a claymore will take out 50% of the people over a football field when it
Wow.
blows. Whoomp. We would daisy chain claymores, which means we would run det cord, which looks like clothesline, except it's explosive. And we would go from one fuse well and one claymore to the next claymore to the next claymore. And we never daisy chained more than 3, but we'd have them daisy chain just in case we were going to run into a lot of bad guys on the trail that night. On the trail that we set up this ambush up a hill, we had the M60 machine gun right on the trail. And in front of him, about 10 feet, was a tripwire connected to a trip flare. When the first bad guy hit the tripwire, the trip flare would go off. The M60 would take out the first guy. The claymores would blow. And for 15 seconds, it was absolute destruction down the trail. Nothing survived.
Yeah.
And 15 seconds, everything stopped because we wanted to know if there was a lot of them, whether they'd be trying to come around us to flank us. And that never happened, thank goodness. But one night we did get 28 of them on the trail in 15 seconds. But our ambushes were just devastating. Now, their ambushes, when they ambushed us, weren't quite as devastating because we had what's called firepower. And it's a term that the military uses to mean that you put out more fire toward them than they throw toward you. And they eventually say, hey, we can't take this. We got to get out of here.
Gotcha.
And they would be firing at you from little slits about this high, dug into the ground, where they could just barely see out. So you had to put out a lot of firepower, but you could get some bullets in those little slits, and that would cause them to back off. So that's what a ambush was all about. And we did that every night. Every night we were ambushing, and just about every night we had action on the ambush. So there were just a lot of bad guys around. The thing I hated most in Vietnam was mortars.
Really? Okay.
They would drop them 3 at a time. You'd hear them drop them, tunk, 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 and then they'd splash down somewhere. And then you'd hear 3 more drop, and they're walking them in on you. Going, oh, man, this is not good. This is not good. Because you never knew where they were going to land or how fast they were going to walk them in on you. There was a time when I was put in charge of securing a landing zone for a resupply, and it was a wide open, dirt, dust-covered field. On the other side of the field, some people that were attached to me to secure that side of the field were behind a log. And we heard the tube drop, and the rounds hit right in front of the log. And I could see the guys panicking. And I'm hollering at the top of my lungs, stay down, don't get up. Because if you get up, that's the way the shrapnel comes from a mortar. And I'm hollering, and they dropped some more rounds, and they hit in front of the log again. And these guys panicked, and they got up and they ran, and they were both killed. And this was a time when I was in the jungle probably 6 months, and I was fried, and I had enough of the war. And every day that you were out of the jungle was a day that you knew you got to live. And I was in a little swale out in the field, and the mortars were dropping. I didn't tell anybody this for the longest time, but I rolled on my back, and I held my left leg in the air, trying to take a hit to get out of the jungle.
Wow.
That's how bad it was.
That's how bad it was, man.
Everybody in my platoon got wounded. I did take some casualties, but that happens, I guess, when you're in combat.
Yeah.
The thing that was scarce in Vietnam with us was water.
Really?
We would be in contact so much that the resupply chopper a lot of times couldn't come in and land. So what he would do, we would pop smoke in the jungle, different colors. We had purple and yellow and red, and we'd pop, say, a yellow smoke grenade, and the smoke would curl up through the trees, and the chopper would spot it, and he would fly low and fast over us. And the first thing that they would kick out the door was ammo. And then he'd come in from a different direction. And the next thing that he would kick out would be food, the sea rations. I put quotation marks around food. And then the last thing that he would kick out, the cannon rounds were shipped in canisters that were sealed. And they would wash these canisters out and put water in for us. And then they drop those out of the chopper. And if he was taking too much fire, water was on us.
Okay.
And a lot of times the water was from bomb craters. And say 15-foot deep bomb crater, and there's mucky black stuff at the bottom. That's what we drank.
Wow.
And we weren't told at the time, but those were all in areas sprayed with Agent Orange. So we were basically drinking dioxins to stay alive.
Wow.
That we got so low on water once that everybody was out. I used to trade peaches and pound cake for my sea rations, which is a delicacy, for a canteen of water. And there was a time when I could not even trade my peaches and pound cake because no one had water.
Really?
I found a little trick. In the morning, in the bottom of an empty canteen, there was always one drop of sandy, gritty water. And you get that one drop of water, and it would keep your tongue from sticking to the roof of your mouth. That's how bad it was.
Wow.
We went out once for almost 90 days nonstop. No shower, shave, haircut, change of clothes, anything. Just constant ambushing, constant getting ambushed for almost 90 days.
That's a challenging 90 days, huh?
I'll tell you what, we smelled it. When it rains in the jungle, it's cold.
Okay.
And we have our home, we didn't have tents, we didn't have sleeping bags because we didn't even talk to each other because you had to be quiet. And it was all hand signal and whispers. And we had poncho liners, and poncho liners very, very, very thin. It's just like a blanket. And that was home for the night. And you sleep on it, on the ground. And one night it rained, and cold rain in the jungle. I went to pull the poncho liner up over my head to get some warm underneath. And the ammonia smell was so bad that I jerked it back so fast because I just couldn't stand the smell anymore.
Wow.
It gets pretty bad sometimes in the jungle. Let me tell you about the time we ambushed about 350 of them. We were chasing bad guys all the time. And we pushed to a finger of trees, and about 100 yards across is where we had to go through an open field to another tree line. And alongside that tree line coming toward us and then curving off to our right, the tree line kept that 100 yards open field. And we were just about ready to cross. And here comes a North Vietnamese with bushes on his back. And then another one. And then another one. And we're counting them. And the company commander's on the horn, on the radio, going back to battalion. He says, excuse my language, nothing intended, but he says, we got gooks in the open. Give me Max, give me Cobras, give me artillery, give me everything you got. Sorry, we can't give you anything unless you have contact. In other words, they wanted us to be in a shooting war back and forth before they would give us any kind of support. Wow. And he's just whispering, swearing up and down because I can hear him. And he says, I got in the open, we got to do something. And over to the right was a chopper that was circling. And every time he circled toward us, these bad guys would get down. And I'm sure from the air, they'd look just like a big old hedgerow. And we're conning them. And they're still coming. And they have anti-aircraft guns. And they're a regiment on the move. And we're 300, 301, 302. And they're snaking up alongside us all the way across this 100-yard open field. And so the company commander runs up to the front. He says, okay, daggone it, I'll give you contact. And he pulls the trigger one time and runs back to the horn. Okay, I got contact. And by the time he said that, trees around us were just falling down because we were taking so much fire. from these bad guys. Fortunately, we had air support, and the bad guys knew this, and they didn't want to get a regiment caught out in the open. So they basically returned fire with us as they headed back into the jungle, probably to an assembly point that they had pre-designated. But they wanted to get out of there because they knew that heavy stuff was coming.
Right.
We chased them
Oh,
for about 4 or 5 days,
really?
and they avoided us. They even avoided our ambushes. They just dispersed and were gone. And so about 5 days later, they decided they're going to combat assault us into another hot spot. So we're all out in this field waiting for the choppers, and the first load takes off, and they head out to the new landing zone. And as they're coming in, they have a hot landing zone. So the Cobras are expending ammo over there. And then slicks come back and they pick up the next group of people. We did 3 shifts and they go. And so it's just me and my platoon on the ground. And they're still having a hot landing zone. And so they're taking their time over there because they're expending ammo and making it safe. And the bad guys thought we left. And they come out of the tree line. We're talking these 300 plus.
What?
And there's 30 of us in this open field, an elephant grass that barely covers us. So this is where my OCS repetition paid off. I knew how to get the Cobras and how to shoot azimuths. And I told the Cobras, don't expend all your ammo because you're going to have a hot PZ when you come in here. And so I shot an azimuth where the Cobras would come in this way, the Hueys would come in underneath them, pick us up, and the Cobras were expending their rockets on the bad guys, and we were firing full automatic out the door, and we made it out of there. But that could have been a real mess. That could
Yeah.
have been a real mess.
Wow. So
So
that, man, I'll tell you what, that's, people that have not been in those situations, even you paint the story very well. You're an excellent storyteller, and you're also the book's up on the your book's up on the screen there, but I've got it sitting right here. You read this, and listening to it for the second time, I've heard you speak about this. Um, it's we don't even begin to understand what you guys went through, and I can tell you.
well,
Uh, Go ahead.
no, I'm just going to say that was part of my purpose. Is that I'm old enough that there were people that weren't even born yet when I was doing all this stuff. And a
Right.
lot of people are unfamiliar with what Vietnam was all about, what the draft was all about. Can you imagine being a kid walking the streets and all of a sudden you get yanked into the military and given a
Right.
rifle and told to go to a foreign country and kill people at nighttime?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's,
All they want to do is go play
you know,
baseball in
you
the
kind of
sandlot,
shake
right?
your head at that. That's not real.
Exactly.
No, that can't happen.
Wow. Well, it's
I'll
good
tell
that
you
you're
what.
telling the
Yeah,
story.
it wasn't a draft like the NFL just had
No, no.
with
I'm
what Vietnam was about. So, because a lot of people just don't understand it. They go, "Oh, Vietnam War. Okay, yeah, we went over there. We fought the Vietnam War." They don't know about the French and the colonization. And Ho Chi Minh came to the United States 8 times to get the French out of his country before he turned to the communists. And
okay.
that's the only reason he turned to the communists. And so somebody over here thought, well, this might be good for business. So they said, domino theory. First South Vietnam goes, then China, or then Japan, then Australia, then Mexico. Where are we going to stop them at the Texas border? And then when that didn't work out, they also mixed in there the Gulf of Tonkin, where supposedly we had a boat that was attacked by the North Vietnamese. But that's been proven false. And when I was there, they ran out of excuses for us to be there. So we were there for this nebulous reason of winning the hearts and the minds of the people.
Yeah. Huh.
And that's why we were there.
Wow. Well, you know, I can I can tell you and I know that anybody that catches this will appreciate the efforts and what you guys did, and the military in general, and anybody that's been in combat never gets enough thanks. If because people need to hear these stories to understand what we put young men and women into, and kids into, really, for the most part. And and I
Yeah.
think a key factor, Ken, is I just like to say, is that wars, generally speaking, are determined by civilian leadership, right? But the military,
Yep.
you don't have a choice. Your generals and commanders and people are going to follow orders, and so and I think Vietnam was one of those. That was a pretty hated war, right? Pretty unsupported
Well,
war. It,
when the Vietnam vet came back, I got a neutral welcome home. I had no welcome home, but no spit on or anything like that, or
mhm,
hollered that I was a baby killer. But one thing that people of the United States need to realize is the military does not make that decision, like you said. It's the people that are governing that make the decision. The military doesn't have a choice; they follow
mhm,
orders. Period.
right,
Regardless. And so when they tell you to go somewhere and do something, you go somewhere and do something. It's not up for negotiation.
right.
But it's not you, the military, that's making the decision.
Yeah, that's
So,
that's a yeah, that's an excellent point. Um,
yeah, yeah.
so So Ken, as you've been very kind with your time, and we're going to have you back because you already said that you would come back. I appreciate you writing the book. Um, they can go to Amazon
Hmm.
and tell us how we can, because I got my book in person from you, which I was excited
Oh,
to do.
yes.
But t-
Yeah.
t- t- t-
All you have to do is go to Amazon.com and books, and it's called Free Fire 365 Days in the Kill Zone. And what kill zone means, by the way, is we could shoot anything that breathed. We were in a
okay,
free fire zone.
okay,
And so I didn't have to worry about going into a village or anything like that. And I have a story on that also, where we let two guys live just because they were unarmed, but we could have shot them on the spot. And I feel good about that today.
sure.
But it's called Free Fire: 365 Days in the Kill Zone by Ken Drombosky. And it's real easy to find. If you memorize the cover there, you'll find it pretty easy.
Right.
So
Well,
I really
and
appreciate you having me on the air, Randy.
well, of course, I appreciate it. Like I said, when I watched your talk a month and a half ago, then I got your book and read it. I knew I had to have you on, one to support you and your efforts in the military, but people need to hear the story. Very good book, and it gives us all that worked there just a little sneak peek into what it was like for guys like you and your men. So with that said, thank you. I appreciate your efforts there, and appreciate you coming on the show. And you know what we'll do? We'll do this again, and maybe we'll get a few more
Okay.
stories. How's that?
Oh, I didn't even go into a quarter of what I have.
Oh, I know. I'm very sure of that. Hey, Kirsten just popped your information up there too. So thank you, Kirsten. Uh, well, Ken, I appreciate it, and you go have a magnificent weekend.
You too.
Take your lovely wife out for dinner for Mom's Day or something.
All right.
Go
Appreciate your
just
time.
well, you bet. Thank you, my friend.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
All right, folks. I hope you enjoyed that incredibly good conversation as much as I did. Like I said, I got to listen to Ken a month and a half ago talk. Heard a couple new things here. Some of the stuff that Ken talked about, I'd heard before, and I did read his full book. And you need to buy it. Buy the book. It's very, very, very good, and gives us, like I said, I remember he was talking about the draft. I'm at a younger age. He's 75. I'm gonna not say how old I am, but everybody knows. I I had a draft number, but I never was really super close to that number coming up when it was kind of easing down. So I never had a big fear, but I do know what Ken's talking about is there's wow that's everything that was being painted about that time was not good. The only thing good, some great music. Great Vietnam music. I got to say that. Anyway, that is it. We hope you enjoyed that, and we'll have Ken back. So before I tell you this, Mother's Day, don't forget Mother's Day. It's important. Remember your mothers. And that includes all mothers in your life, whether your mother's with us or not now. Remember, if it's aunts, grandmas, daughters, granddaughters in my case that are mothers now. Whew, old. Anyway, don't forget. And what are we doing next week? We're going to be back same time, 3 o'clock, and really staying in the industry as Ken is we talked about very briefly that he still is in the metal industry, but I should do a shout out. He used to be with Fabrel, which is a well-known national manufacturer of metal roofing and siding across North America, and he spent several years with Hickswood, which is now Hickswood, I should say. It used to be Qualiform Metals, a great customer of mine in Shiloh, Ohio. So Ken is actively involved in the industry which I live, and so I appreciate him again being on, spending some time with us. Next week we're going to stay in the industry with another friend of mine, Brett Thorne. Brett is a fellow industry pro. He's got a great beard too. But I met up with Brett. We've got to know each other via social media and had some chats, and we got to spend some time together in person in Orlando at the LBM Advantage show. Actually, where Kirsten that's on all the time works as a trader, and she actually introduced us together. And he owns a lumber yard. I think it might be more than one branch. In the middle states of the country, and he's also got he hosts his own podcast called Building the Future. Matter of fact, I got his little card, so if you ever see that, that's what his little card looks like, Building the Future. And I've listened to that. If you get a chance, check him out on that. But also, we're going to chat next week: industry leadership, just what's going on in the industry and whatever else. You'll find him as a great guy. So, anyways, that's it. Rambled long enough. I've got dinner to go to tonight with friends and do some Happy Mother's Day with the hashtag Dixie Chick this weekend. And that's it. So, as always, thank you for supporting Building Wins Live, and keep watching for some more exciting stuff coming down the pike. We got Wes and I. We met last week Monday. I think we shot a little video or said something. Maybe shot a picture or two. But we got a lot of plans coming. We're not going away. We're just getting more and better. Hopefully better. And but anyways, that's it. Remember, live it, love it, own it. And remember this: today is your best day ever. Make today your best day ever until tomorrow, or whatever you want to do. Just make it good. Make it huge. Got to go. Dinner's calling. Cheers, y'all.